Thought I was being the perfect girlfriend until I overheard my boyfriend telling his best friend he's settling for me and planning to break up after our lease ends. I work as a graphic designer at a creative agency, and yesterday was one of those rare days where I finished my client presentations ahead of schedule, so I decided to surprise my boyfriend Marcus with his favorite Thai food since we've both been swamped with work lately and haven't had much quality time together. We've been together for 2.5 years and living together for 10 months in this amazing one-bedroom apartment downtown that we signed a year lease for back in January, and I honestly thought things were going really well between us. The past few weeks have been stressful for both of us, with Marcus working overtime at his marketing firm trying to land this big client and me juggling 3 major design projects with impossible deadlines, but I figured that was just normal couple stuff that everyone goes through when they're building careers and a life together. We've been talking about getting a dog once we renew our lease in March and maybe taking a vacation to Costa Rica this summer since Marcus has always wanted to try surfing. I've been dying to photograph some of those incredible beaches I've seen on Instagram. I stopped by our favorite Thai restaurant and ordered everything Marcus loves: the pad Thai with extra peanuts, the green curry that's so spicy it makes him sweat, and those crispy spring rolls he always steals off my plate even when he orders his own. I also grabbed a bottle of that expensive wine we splurged on for my birthday last month because I thought it would be nice to have a romantic dinner at home for once instead of collapsing on the couch with takeout containers while we scroll through our phones. I was genuinely excited driving home, thinking about how surprised and happy Marcus would be when he walked through the door to find dinner ready, and maybe we could finally have one of those long conversations we used to have when we first started dating, where we'd talk for hours about everything and nothing until we realized the sun was coming up. Those moments feel so rare now with our busy schedules, but I keep telling myself that's just what happens when you're in a serious adult relationship and not the honeymoon phase anymore. I got home around 5:30 p.m., which is way earlier than usual since I normally don't leave the office until 7 at the earliest, and Marcus's car was already in our assigned parking spot, which surprised me because he usually hits the gym after work and doesn't get home until at least 6:45. I figured maybe he'd skipped his workout because he was tired, or maybe he wasn't feeling well and had left work early, which would actually be perfect timing for my surprise dinner plan. When I got to our apartment door, I could hear voices coming from inside, and I immediately recognized Marcus's laugh along with the deeper voice of his best friend Tyler, who comes over pretty regularly to play video games or watch whatever sport is in season. Tyler and Marcus have been friends since college, and while I've always gotten along with him fine, he's one of those guys who still acts like he's 22 even though he's almost 30, and sometimes I feel like he encourages Marcus to be less mature than he naturally is. I was juggling the takeout bags and trying to fish my keys out of my purse when I heard Marcus's voice getting louder, and he sounded frustrated or maybe just tired, which made me hesitate because I didn't want to interrupt if they were having some kind of serious conversation about work or family or whatever guys talk about when they think no one else is listening. That's when I heard him say something that made my blood run completely cold and my hands freeze on my keychain. "I'm just going through the motions at this point, man. She's nice enough, but I feel like I'm settling for someone who's just not exciting anymore, and I can't shake the feeling that there's someone better out there for me." I almost dropped all the food because there was absolutely no question he was talking about me, and I couldn't understand where this was coming from since we'd literally spent last weekend looking at furniture for our living room and talking about maybe adopting one of those golden retriever mixes from the shelter Marcus had bookmarked on his laptop. But then Tyler responded in that casual way guys talk when they think they're giving relationship advice, and said, "Dude, you've been saying this stuff for months, why don't you just end it instead of wasting both your time and hers?" And Marcus lets out this long sigh and goes, "I know I should, but it's complicated. We signed a year lease together and we're only 10 months in, so breaking up now would mean dealing with subletting or paying the penalty fee and all that drama, plus she's so invested in this relationship and constantly talking about our future together, and I just don't have the heart to crush her when she hasn't actually done anything wrong." I felt like the ground was disappearing under my feet because this person I've been building what I thought was a beautiful life with apparently sees our entire relationship as a burden he's too polite to end, and has been going through the motions for months while I've been over here planning weekend trips and thinking about what our kids might look like someday, completely oblivious to the fact that he's been mentally checking out. Tyler says, "So what's your plan then? Just keep pretending until the lease is up in what, 2 months?" And Marcus goes, "2 months exactly, but yeah, pretty much. I figure I can tough it out until March, and then when we have to decide about renewing, I can just tell her I want to get my own place and ease into the breakup conversation without having to deal with the immediate logistics of one of us moving out while we're both upset and emotional about everything." That hit me like a physical blow because I had no idea that wanting a stable, committed relationship with someone I love made me some kind of clingy burden that needed to be toughed out, and suddenly all those times recently when Marcus seemed distracted during our conversations or less enthusiastic about plans we'd made started to make horrible sense. He wasn't just going through a rough patch or stressed about work, he was actively counting down the days until he could escape our relationship without too much inconvenience. Tyler asks, "Is there someone else you're interested in, or are you just ready to be single again?" And Marcus pauses for what feels like forever before saying, "Actually, yeah, there's this girl Stephanie at my office who I've been getting closer with over the past few months, and she's everything my girlfriend isn't." She's spontaneous and has all these interesting hobbies, and when I talk to her, I remember what it feels like to actually be excited about someone instead of just comfortable and settled. I had to lean against the hallway wall because I felt dizzy and nauseous, learning that my boyfriend wasn't just planning to leave me but was already emotionally involved with someone else and had probably been building that relationship for who knows how long while coming home to me every night and pretending everything was normal. Suddenly, all those late nights at the office and weekend work events he'd been attending made perfect sense because he wasn't just working, he was cultivating a relationship with someone he actually wanted to be with. Tyler goes, "Have you guys crossed any lines yet, or is this still just workplace friendship territory?" And Marcus says, "Not physically, but we text constantly throughout the day and we've hung out outside of work several times, just the two of us, and I've told her about my situation at home. She knows I'm planning to end things with my girlfriend once our lease is up, and she's been really understanding about waiting because she says she can tell I'm not happy in my current relationship." Well, Tyler says, "It sounds like you've already made your decision emotionally, you just need to follow through with the practical stuff." Marcus responds, "I know, and honestly, Stephanie has been dropping hints that she's getting a little impatient with the whole situation because she wants to make things official between us, and I don't blame her. She's incredible and ambitious and has all these goals beyond just settling down and playing house like some people I know, and I don't want to lose her because I'm too much of a coward to end a relationship that's been essentially over for months anyway." I realized I was crying, but I tried to stay as quiet as possible because I needed to hear everything, even though each word felt like someone was stabbing me in the chest with a rusty knife. This was the person I'd been sharing a bed with every night for almost a year, who apparently thought our relationship was essentially over while I was completely clueless, planning our future and thinking we were just going through a normal rough patch that all couples experience. Tyler asks, "When are you planning to have the conversation with her about ending things?" And Marcus says, "Probably not until we're getting close to the lease renewal deadline, because honestly it's just easier to maintain the status quo until then. She cooks dinner most nights and keeps the apartment clean and pays her half of all the bills on time, so it's not like living with her is terrible, it's just not what I want for my future, and I'd rather not deal with months of awkwardness and emotional drama if I can avoid it." Tyler goes, "That seems kind of harsh, dude, leading her on for 2 more months when you already know you want it, and you're basically having an emotional affair with someone else." "I know it's not the most honorable approach," Marcus says, "but breaking up now would mean one of us would have to find a new place immediately and probably lose our security deposit and deal with breaking the lease early, and honestly it's just easier to wait until March when we can both walk away cleanly. Plus she's so happy right now making all these plans for spring and summer and talking about adopting a dog, and I keep thinking maybe I should just let her enjoy the illusion until I absolutely have to shatter it." I couldn't listen to another word, so I quietly set the food down outside our neighbor's door, hoping they wouldn't mind the free Thai food, and crept back down the hallway to the stairwell where I sat on the concrete steps and just sobbed until I couldn't breathe properly. This person I love more than anyone in the world sees me as a temporary roommate he's tolerating until he can upgrade to someone more exciting without any messy complications. I must have sat there for 20 minutes trying to process that my entire adult life for the past 2.5 years has been built around a relationship with someone who apparently finds me boring and predictable, and has been planning his escape route for months while lying to my face every single day about loving me and wanting to build a future together. The worst part is knowing that he's been sharing intimate details about our relationship with this Stephanie person and probably making me sound like some desperate, clingy girlfriend when all I've been doing is trying to be a good partner to someone who checked out emotionally months ago. I finally pulled myself together enough to drive to my best friend Casey's apartment across town because I needed someone to tell me I wasn't losing my mind or completely overreacting to what I'd overheard. Casey has been my closest friend since we worked together at my first job out of college, and she's always been brutally honest with me even when I didn't want to hear it, so I knew she'd give me real advice instead of just telling me what I wanted to hear. When Casey opened her door and saw my tear-stained face and probably crazy hair from sitting in a stairwell having a breakdown, she immediately pulled me inside and made me sit on her couch while she got me tissues and a glass of wine. When I finally managed to tell her everything I'd overheard, she was absolutely furious and kept pacing around her living room saying things like I never trusted that guy and I always thought he was too smooth and calculated, but that she hadn't wanted to interfere because I seemed genuinely happy with him. "What are you going to do?" she asked after I'd finished the whole horrible story. And I honestly had no idea because my entire identity for the past 2.5 years has been wrapped up in being Marcus's girlfriend and planning our life together, and now I'm finding out that he sees me as some boring placeholder he's been tolerating while he figures out how to transition to someone more suitable for his actual preferences and goals. Casey said you need to confront him tonight before this charade goes any further and he spends 2 more months lying to your face while texting his work girlfriend about their future together. But I told her I needed time to think and process everything because I was so hurt and shocked and angry I didn't trust myself to have any kind of rational conversation, and I definitely didn't want to give him the satisfaction of seeing me completely fall apart when he's probably been hoping I'd figure things out on my own and make it easy for him by being the one to suggest we take a break or something. I stayed at Casey's apartment until almost 10 p.m. talking through everything and trying to make sense of how I could have been so completely wrong about the state of my relationship and whether there were signs I'd missed that Marcus was unhappy or if he's just really good at lying and compartmentalizing his feelings. Casey pointed out that some people are just naturally deceptive and that it wasn't my fault for trusting someone I loved and had every reason to believe was being honest with me. When I finally went home, I found Marcus in our bedroom already in his pajamas scrolling through his phone, and he looked up when I walked in and smiled like absolutely nothing had happened and asked where I'd been and if I'd eaten dinner because he'd ordered pizza since he got hungry waiting for me to get home from work. I just stared at him for a long moment and said, "I had an interesting evening, how was yours?" And he goes, "Nothing special, just hung out with Tyler for a while and watched the Lakers game," and I wanted to scream because he was lying directly to my face after spending the afternoon planning his exit strategy with his best friend and discussing another woman he's clearly having an emotional affair with while I was out buying his favorite food to surprise him. I said, "Did you guys talk about anything important or just sports?" And he shrugged and said, "Just the usual stuff, work complaints and Tyler's dating disasters, nothing too serious," and I could see him getting slightly nervous like he was wondering if I suspected something but still trying to play it cool and maintain his cover story. So I said, "That's funny because I actually came home earlier to surprise you with Thai food from that place you love, but you and Tyler seem to be having such an intense conversation I didn't want to interrupt, so I decided to visit Casey instead." His face went completely white and he started stammering about how they were probably just complaining about their bosses or discussing some work project Tyler was stressed about, but I could tell he was internally panicking, trying to figure out exactly what I might have heard and how much damage control he needed to do. I said, "Well, I'm pretty exhausted from my day, so I think I'm going to take a shower and go to bed early," and he looked visibly relieved like he'd dodged a bullet and said that was fine because he wanted to finish watching some show on Netflix anyway, which probably meant texting Stephanie about his day and their plans while I was in the bathroom. I went through my normal nighttime routine, but everything felt surreal and mechanical, like I was playing a role in someone else's life, because how do you brush your teeth and wash your face when you've just discovered that the person sleeping next to you thinks you're boring and has been planning to replace you for months? I laid in our bed staring at the ceiling, listening to Marcus type on his phone and probably telling another woman how much he wishes he could be with her instead of stuck with his boring girlfriend for 2 more months. I kept thinking about all the times recently when I've suggested date nights or weekend trips to places we'd talked about visiting, and Marcus has seemed less enthusiastic or made excuses about being too busy or too tired, and now I know it's because he's been comparing everything to what he could be doing with Stephanie instead. Every conversation we've had about our future together, about renewing our lease or adopting a dog or planning that Costa Rica trip, has been completely meaningless to him because he's already decided he wants a different future with someone else entirely. The thing that really devastates me is that he's planning to wait until our lease renewal comes up to tell me, which means he's going to spend the next 2 months pretending to love me and plan our future while secretly counting down the days until he can dump me and officially start his new life with his work colleague who apparently represents everything I'm not sophisticated enough to be. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I know I can't keep pretending everything is normal when my boyfriend thinks I'm boring and predictable and has been emotionally cheating on me with someone he's already planning to build a life with while using our shared lease as an excuse to string me along for his own convenience. Update 1. I barely slept at all last night and kept replaying that entire conversation over and over in my head, analyzing every word and trying to figure out how I could have been so completely blind to what was happening in my own relationship. This morning when Marcus left for work, he kissed me goodbye and told me he loved me exactly like he does every single morning, but now I know it's all an elaborate performance and he's probably going straight to work to text Stephanie about how he can't wait to be free of his boring domestic girlfriend in just 2 more months. I called in sick to work because there was absolutely no way I could focus on designing marketing materials and attending client meetings when my entire life just got exposed as a lie and I needed time to figure out what my next move should be. I spent most of the morning alternating between crying and feeling completely numb, but then around noon I started getting angry because how dare Marcus make me feel like there's something fundamentally wrong with me for wanting a committed, loving relationship when that's exactly what we both said we wanted when we decided to move in together. The more I thought about it, the more furious I became, because this isn't just about him falling out of love or realizing we're incompatible. This is about him making a deliberate choice to deceive me for months while building a relationship with someone else and then planning to string me along for 2 more months just because it's more convenient for him than being honest about what he actually wants. Around lunchtime I decided to do something I never thought I'd do and drove to Marcus's office building because I needed to see this Stephanie person for myself and understand what I'm apparently failing to compete with. I felt pathetic sitting in the parking garage like some kind of stalker, but I also felt like I deserved to know what kind of person my boyfriend has been having an emotional affair with while pretending to be committed to our relationship. I waited for about an hour and a half, feeling increasingly ridiculous, when I finally saw Marcus walking out of the main entrance with a woman I didn't recognize, and they were laughing about something, and he had his hand on her lower back in a way that was definitely not appropriate for coworkers. Even from a distance, I could tell she was everything I'm not. She's probably 5'8" with perfect blonde hair and the kind of effortless style that comes from having money and confidence, and she moved through the world like someone who's never questioned whether she deserves good things. She was wearing this gorgeous emerald green dress that probably cost more than I spend on clothes in 3 months, and carrying one of those expensive leather bags that I always admire in stores but would never buy because it seems too impractical for my lifestyle. She looked like the type of person who goes to wine tastings and art gallery openings, and has interesting opinions about books I've never heard of, while I'm apparently the boring homebody who just wants to adopt a dog and cook dinner together on weeknights. I watched them walk to what I assumed was her car, a sleek white BMW that was definitely not the kind of vehicle someone my age could typically afford, which made me wonder what she does for work and whether she's one of those people who comes from money or just makes way more than I do as a designer. Marcus was looking at her the way he used to look at me during our first few months of dating, when everything felt new and exciting, and I realized this isn't just an emotional affair anymore, because you don't look at someone like that or touch them like that unless things have progressed way beyond friendly conversations in the break room. I sat there watching them until they drove away, and then I just cried in my car for probably 20 minutes thinking about how Marcus has been coming home to me every night and pretending to care about my day and our plans while secretly building this whole other relationship with someone who's obviously more glamorous and sophisticated than I'll ever be. I drove home feeling completely hollow, and that's when I decided I wasn't going to wait around for Marcus to work up the courage to dump me in 2 months. If he wants out of our relationship, then I'm going to give him exactly what he wants, but I'm not going to let him control the timeline or the narrative while I sit there like an idiot thinking we're working towards some kind of future together. I started looking at apartments online and was shocked by how expensive everything is when you're looking for a place by yourself instead of splitting costs with someone, but I found a few studio apartments in decent neighborhoods that I could probably afford if I cut back on some expenses and maybe picked up some freelance projects on weekends. It would be tight financially, but honestly it would be worth it to get away from someone who's been lying to me for months and sees me as a temporary inconvenience. I also called our landlord and asked about the early termination clause in our lease, and found out that breaking it would cost us 2 months' rent, plus we'd lose our security deposit, which is a lot of money but seems like a small price to pay to escape from this situation with whatever dignity I have left. The landlord said she'd need written notice from both tenants, but that she could probably find new renters pretty quickly since our building is in a popular area. The hardest part was calling my parents and telling them what was happening, because they absolutely adore Marcus and always talk about what a wonderful young man he is and how perfect we are together and how excited they are about the possibility of grandchildren someday. My mom was completely shocked and kept asking if I was absolutely sure I hadn't misunderstood something or taken a private conversation out of context, but I told her there was no possible misunderstanding when someone says they're settling for you and planning to leave you for someone else. My dad was quiet for a really long time, which is typical for him when he's processing difficult information, and then he said, "Sweetheart, if that's really how this young man feels about you, then you're better off finding out now before you invest any more of your life in someone who doesn't recognize your worth." My mom started crying and saying she couldn't believe Marcus would be capable of such deception because he's always seemed so genuine and caring when they've spent time together, but my dad pointed out that some people are just really good at showing people what they want to see, and that it doesn't mean I'm a bad judge of character, it just means Marcus is better at lying than we gave him credit for. When Marcus came home that evening, he was in an unusually good mood, which probably means he had a wonderful day making plans with Stephanie while I was having the worst day of my entire life. He asked what I'd done since I wasn't at work, and I told him I wasn't feeling well and had spent the day resting and trying to get better. He said, "Well, hopefully you'll feel up to doing something fun this weekend, because I was thinking maybe we could check out that new art gallery downtown that just opened, or maybe drive up to the mountains if the weather's nice." And I just stared at him, thinking about how he told Tyler yesterday that spending time with me felt like going through the motions, but here he is still pretending to want to do couple activities with me, probably because he's trying to maintain the illusion for 2 more months. I said, "Actually, I think I might be busy this weekend." He looked genuinely surprised and asked what I was planning to do, and I said just some personal things I need to figure out, and he didn't push for more details, but I could tell he was confused because I never have mysterious plans that I don't want to share with him, and I'm usually happy to spend weekends together. Tomorrow I'm going to look at apartments, and then I'm going to come home and tell Marcus exactly what I heard and that I know about Stephanie, and that he doesn't have to wait until our lease ends to start his exciting new life, because I'm done pretending everything is fine when my boyfriend thinks I'm boring and has already emotionally moved on to someone he actually wants to be with. Update 2. I spent yesterday looking at 4 different apartments and finally put a deposit down on this cute studio place that's actually closer to my office and has these amazing floor-to-ceiling windows that let in incredible natural light, which will be perfect for my photography hobby that I'd kind of neglected while I was focused on being the perfect girlfriend. The landlord said I can move in next weekend, which feels both terrifying and liberating because I'm finally taking control of my life instead of waiting around for someone else to decide my fate. I spent the rest of the afternoon gathering all my important documents and making sure I had everything I needed to start over financially, which was actually easier than I expected since I've always been pretty organized about keeping track of my own stuff separate from our shared household things. It felt strange going through our apartment knowing that soon I'd be dividing everything up and packing my life into boxes, but it also felt empowering to realize that I can absolutely take care of myself without someone who's been secretly resenting our entire relationship. I also called my bank and started the process of opening my own checking account since our finances have been pretty intertwined for the past year and I want to make sure Marcus can't access any of my money during this transition period. The woman at the bank was really helpful and explained all my options for direct deposit and online banking, and it felt good to be making practical decisions about my future instead of just wallowing in self-pity about my relationship falling apart. When Marcus got home from work, he seemed distracted and kept checking his phone every few minutes, which I now know means Stephanie was probably texting him about their secret relationship and their plans for when he's finally free to be with her officially. He barely touched the pasta I'd made for dinner and kept saying he had some project deadlines to meet, but I could see him smiling at his phone screen in a way that was definitely not work-related. After dinner I said, "Marcus, we really need to talk about something important." He looked up from his phone with this guilty expression that he tried to hide by clearing his throat and said, "Sure, what's on your mind?" I took a deep breath and said, "Yesterday when I came home early to surprise you with dinner, I heard your entire conversation with Tyler about how you regret being with me and want out of our relationship." His face went completely white and he started stumbling over his words, trying to explain that I must have misunderstood something and that he was just having a bad day and venting to his friend about work stress, but I cut him off before he could spin some elaborate lie. "I also heard you talking about Stephanie and how you've been having an emotional affair with her for months and planning to leave me once our lease ends in March." Marcus put his head in his hands and sat there in complete silence for what felt like forever before he finally looked up at me and said, "I never wanted you to find out like this. I was trying to figure out the best way to handle everything." "So it's all true then," I said, trying to keep my voice steady even though I felt like I was going to throw up. "You really do think I'm boring, and you really have been lying to my face for months while secretly planning to replace me with your coworker." He tried to explain that it wasn't that simple and that he did care about me deeply, but that he'd realized over time that we wanted different things from life and that he developed feelings for someone else that made him question whether he was truly happy in our relationship. But I told him that lying to me for months and making me think I was imagining problems was way more cruel than just being honest would have been. "How long has this thing with Stephanie been going on?" I asked, even though I wasn't sure I really wanted to know the answer. Marcus hesitated for a long time and then said, "We started getting close as friends about 4 months ago, but it turned into something more over the past 2 months, and I realized that what I feel for her is different from what we have together." "And you didn't think I deserved to know that my boyfriend had developed feelings for someone else?" He said, "I was trying to figure out how to handle it without completely destroying your life and our living situation. I didn't want to hurt you if I wasn't sure about my feelings." "Well, congratulations, Marcus, you've hurt me anyway, but at least now I don't have to waste 2 more months living with someone who thinks I'm boring and has already decided he wants to be with someone else." He started getting emotional and saying that he never meant to hurt me and that he knew I was a good person who deserved to be with someone who appreciated me, but I told him that if he really thought I deserved better, then he should have been honest with me instead of planning to string me along for months while he got his personal affairs in order. "So what happens now?" he asked, like he was genuinely confused about why I might be upset about this whole situation. I told him I'd already found a new apartment, and would be moving out next weekend, and that he could have Stephanie over whenever he wanted since he wouldn't have to pretend to care about my feelings anymore or worry about maintaining his elaborate deception. He looked absolutely shocked that I'd already taken action and kept saying he thought we could work through it or maybe take some time apart to figure things out, but I told him there was no point in working on anything when he'd already decided he wanted to be with someone else and had been lying to me about it for months. "I'll pay the lease termination fee," he said, "since this is all my fault." "Don't bother," I replied. "I'd rather handle it myself than owe you anything. And Marcus, next time you want out of a relationship, maybe try being honest instead of lying to someone's face while you plan your exit strategy behind their back." He tried to apologize again and kept saying he never meant for things to happen this way, but I told him I was done talking about it and went to start packing my things because for the first time in months I felt like I could finally breathe, knowing that I wouldn't have to spend another day wondering why something felt wrong in our relationship when the answer was that my boyfriend had been emotionally cheating on me. Update 3. It's been a month since I moved out of our apartment, and Marcus has been trying to contact me constantly through text messages and voicemails, but I blocked him on everything because I have absolutely nothing left to say to someone who was willing to deceive me for months while planning to abandon our relationship for someone more exciting. My new studio apartment is small, but it's entirely mine, and I love waking up every morning knowing I'm not sharing space with someone who secretly resented my existence and was counting down the days until he could escape. The process of dividing our belongings was awkward but mercifully quick since most of our stuff was clearly his or mine, and I didn't want anything that would remind me of the life I thought we were building together. He kept trying to have deep conversations about closure and understanding each other's perspectives, but I just wanted to get my things and leave because there's nothing to understand about someone who thinks settling means being with me and was actively planning to replace me while lying about loving me. I found out through our mutual friend Jessica that Marcus and Stephanie are already officially together and posting pictures on social media like they're some amazing power couple, which is pretty disgusting considering he was living with me less than 2 months ago. But I guess when you've been planning something for months, it's easy to make it official quickly without any awkward transition period. The surprising thing is that I'm not nearly as heartbroken as I thought I'd be, which probably means some part of me knew something was wrong even if I couldn't put my finger on what it was. Yes, it hurts deeply to know that someone I loved was capable of such elaborate deception and manipulation, but I'm also genuinely relieved to be free of a relationship where I was constantly trying to figure out why something felt off without realizing my boyfriend had already emotionally left months ago. My friends have been absolutely incredible throughout this whole nightmare, and several of them have admitted they always thought Marcus was kind of selfish and self-centered but didn't want to say anything because I seemed happy with him. Casey told me she always felt like he thought he was too good for everyone around him and was just waiting for something better to come along, which honestly makes me feel validated because it means the problem was never me being boring or inadequate, it was him being someone who wanted constant excitement and novelty but was too cowardly to be honest about it. I've started seeing a therapist to work through the betrayal and abandonment issues, and she's been incredibly helpful in helping me understand that Marcus's characterization of me as boring and predictable was really just him projecting his own fear of commitment and intimacy onto me. She explained that people who have emotional affairs often rewrite the history of their relationship to make their partner seem inadequate or incompatible so they can justify their behavior to themselves and avoid feeling guilty about their deception. Work has been going amazingly well, and my creative director offered me a promotion to senior designer that comes with a significant salary increase and the opportunity to work on some really high-profile campaigns, which is ironic because Marcus always said I was too focused on my career and not spontaneous enough, but now that focus and dedication is paying off in ways that will make my single life even better than my coupled life ever was. I've also been rediscovering parts of myself that got completely lost during the relationship, not because Marcus was controlling or demanding, but because I'd focused so much energy on being the perfect girlfriend and building our perfect domestic life that I'd stopped prioritizing my own interests and friendships and personal growth. I've joined a hiking club and started taking weekend photography trips to places I've always wanted to visit, and it turns out I'm actually pretty adventurous and interesting when I'm not trying to accommodate someone who secretly thought our entire relationship was boring and predictable. The funniest part of this whole situation happened last week when I ran into Tyler at the grocery store near my new apartment, and he had the absolute nerve to try to apologize and say he felt terrible about his role in everything. I told him that while he was Marcus's friend and it was natural for him to support him, he could have suggested that Marcus be honest with me instead of helping him plan months of deception and manipulation. He said he thought Marcus would eventually work up the courage to tell me the truth himself, and I said, well, maybe he would have if you hadn't been enabling his cowardice and helping him justify stringing me along while he figured out how to transition to his backup plan without any inconvenience to himself. He looked really uncomfortable, but I honestly don't care because he played a significant role in one of the worst periods of my life by encouraging Marcus to prioritize his own convenience and comfort over my right to know the truth about my own relationship and make informed decisions about my future. I know I'm going to be so much better than fine because I'm the same person I was before Marcus decided I wasn't exciting enough for his evolving tastes, and I'm realizing that someone who truly loved and valued me would have seen my loyalty and commitment and desire for stability as incredible strengths rather than boring character flaws that needed to be hidden from while planning an escape route. Stephanie can absolutely have him, along with his wandering eye and his tendency to blame other people when he gets bored or restless, because those exact same qualities that made him dissatisfied with me and our relationship will eventually make him dissatisfied with her too, especially once the novelty wears off and they settle into their own domestic routine. I'm building an entirely new life based on what I actually want and value instead of what I thought would make someone else happy, and sometimes the most devastating truths really are the ones you accidentally overhear when people think you can't hear them, but sometimes those overheard conversations are exactly the wake-up call you need to stop wasting your precious time and energy on someone who fundamentally doesn't deserve either one.